My name is Sharon Henry, lifelong friend of Marilyn's, and I'm a very recently retired rabbi, 49 days. Some of you have likely read or you've heard of the author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. She wrote the book called Americana. It's a wonderful book. She also wrote a very thin volume. It's called Notes on Grief. And the last line of the book is one of the most compelling sentences I've ever heard about loss. She's writing about her father, but what she says is universally true. And so I'm going to edit here slightly. I'm writing about my brother in the past tense, and I can't believe I'm writing about him in the past tense. I imagine you will have a hard time speaking about Murray Jacob Kabb in the past tense, because he still and always will be a big, important, and influential part of your lives. His impact on your life and your connections with him will remain permanently and indelibly in your minds, on your hearts, and within your souls. This short poem, it's only 3 phrases long, written by W.S. Merwin, describes the way that Murray was part of the very fabric of your lives, and what that means now that he's gone. Your absence has gone through me like thread through a needle. Everything I do is stitched with its color. I love that especially because of, I'm going to call him Murray Jacob, which should really get everybody in the room included in there, because of his art and just because of his colorful spirit. So I really love that line. Everything I do is stitched with its color. We are here today to honor and celebrate Murray Allen Jacob Kabb's life. We stand alongside one another as we share memories, recall big things, little things, random events, and important moments in his life and of our life with him. We are here to reflect on a life lived fully and well. There's much for which to be grateful. The joyful and gracious way Murray Jacob navigated life's ups and downs, for his playful and also sometimes provocative sense of humor, for his passions for travel and art and people, for his loving and steadfast friendships, for the way he sought and cultivated inner growth and peace. We are grateful for his companionship and presence throughout our lives. Being human means that we will one day lose the ones we love, which means that when someone we love dies, we will grieve. But we will at the same time experience gratitude. And although it sometimes feels impossible, our hearts are big and expansive enough to hold grief and gratitude at the same time. Today we understand the sweetest and most bitter truth of being human. Where there is love, there will be one day grief. And so we ask God to console all of those whose lives intersected with and were made better by Murray Jacob's presence, his devoted caretaker, fierce advocate, and loving sister Marilyn, his sister-in-law Lori, and nephews John and Zach, and all of his dear and loyal friends. We understand that grief affects each person differently, and so we pray for patience and understanding as we navigate this new and unwelcome territory. Jewish tradition provides ancient wells of wisdom from which to draw in moments of sadness and loss. Psalm 121 reminds us to seek stability and help from God and from one another. This is Psalm 121. Sa'anai al-harim ma'ayin yavo Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz. I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul. You're going and coming now and forever. In just a moment, we will hear the 23rd Psalm, which is familiar to many. But regardless of how many times we have heard or recited this psalm, it is different today. Today, this family finds itself in the valley of the shadow of death, described in the psalm. And while the psalm promises that we will one day emerge from our pain, it doesn't tell us how long it will take. What it does tell us is that we are never alone. The imagery of a shepherd in the psalm is poignant. Just as the shepherd cares lovingly for each member of its flock, Murray Jacob was a caretaker. He listened attentively to others and provided loving and faithful support. And when he needed you, you took care of him. Marilyn's extraordinary care combined respect, compassion, dignity, and companionship for many years, regardless of her own circumstances. Perhaps most comforting, the 23rd Psalm helps us understand that regardless of how old we get, we never outgrow the need to feel protected and cared for, especially in times of grief and pain. This is the 23rd Psalm, and I kind of think that Murray Jacob would like it in Hebrew and in English, so I'm going to do it in both languages. Adonai ro'i lo echsar bino desha yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yahaleni nafshi yeshovev, Ncheni v'bagli tzedek laman shemo, gam ki elech b'gates al mavet lo iwara ki ata imadi, shivtecha umishantecha, hema yenachamuni, tayrov lefanai shulchan neged sarai, dishanta v'shem an roshi kosi ravayar, cups overflow. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We have two speakers this afternoon. The first one is Jacob's longtime friend, Lisa, Murray Jacob's longtime friend, Lisa Langton, and then his sister, Marilyn.
I knew Jacob for 35 years. God, give me a minute. I've been doing it. Oh. So first and foremost, thank you to Marilyn for all the times she let me know when he was in the hospital. She will tell you, many bold prayers I prayed, and he had probably 10 extra lives because of those prayers. More than anything, I'm honored to be able to speak at his passing. It's appropriate that today, Miss Perfectionist, I was trying to find something to write on so I wouldn't forget things to say. And of all the things I could only find was a simple brown paper bag in my hotel room that the water was delivered in. But what's ironic is I had to unfold the paper bag to write on it. And it reminded me of one of the many fun times we had together. Jacob made an origami when I had gotten my first position in my career as a celebration took me out. And what he did you guys know what an origami is. There was a number, and behind every number, you could choose whatever's behind that to do. So behind every number was a different restaurant. And we went to one restaurant for an appetizer. We went to another restaurant for dinner. And another one for dessert. You might be wondering why I'm wearing such a bold blue scarf. Because of course I know I'm supposed to all be in black. Well, in 2015, Jacob came to Denver and bought this scarf for me from his friend. And Boulder, we all know he was of limited means. She had recently divorced and started her own business, making silk scarves out of pictures she had taken. And so Jacob bought the scarf and made payments to her so he could afford to give it to me. If anyone received cards from him, it was usually handmade. He loved making his handmade cards. And so I too was the recipient of many a handmade card. I'm gonna share a few things that speaks to Jacob. We all know he was interesting, fun, a foodie, and funny, but most of all, he would give you endless time that you needed. We would talk on the phone for hours every week, and we'd almost talk every day. That's how close we were. So when he was in Colorado, one of the things he did, we were at the Renaissance Festival, and we were in line to get our tickets, and this lady had twins in a baby stroller behind us, and she accidentally bumped him with the stroller. And he looked at me as straight-faced and serious as he could be, and he said, well, 5 years ago that would have bothered me, but since I've had my shock therapy, I'm okay with it. And the lady just started laughing. I mean, it was so funny. It was just classic. The other thing he loved was Reader's Digest. Yeah. And it was ironic, on the way here, I used to buy him a Reader's Digest subscription. And on the way here, I always pack those when I travel, because they're easy to read when you're traveling. And it had an article about friends forever, and how friends will meet at such a small moment in your life, but now you're connected. So we met, ironically, way back in 1990, when it was the oil and gas recession in Colorado. And we met working for a temp agency spelling Sprint long distance. So, I mean, you know, that word doesn't even exist anymore, right? So, it was pretty funny how we met. And a few of the other fun things we did together when I visited him. When I visited him in Atlanta, oh my goodness, you know, he said, what do you want to do? And I really didn't care what we did, because I knew it would be fun and interesting. And so what we did is he had an itinerary. Of course, we ate unique food, Indian food, that's a given. You know that's on the itinerary, right? But we went to the Presidential Library. In that case, it was Jimmy Carter, because he loved history. That was tons of fun. And then the funnest thing of all, we went to a spring festival at a Buddhist temple. And you know, it's not something you're just gonna go do. I think I'll go to a spring festival Buddhist temple today. But it was so much fun, because he's always doing something different. So funny, I'm looking at a brown paper bag. This is hysterical. When I visited him here, more than once, we went to an island that is, I think, west of here, that you couldn't drive cars on. It was, you got there, you ferried over to it, and you drove golf carts all around. And so we just had the best time singing or waving at anybody we saw, whether we know or not. We're like, hi, how are you? You know, and eating ice cream cones. And then when we got back, of course, I told Marilyn it was looked like a prehistoric monster movie because the pier was covered and these some kind of flies, I guess they're mayflies. I'd never seen them before. I'm like, this could be a monster movie, the attack of the mayflies. Jacob, and he made cartoons about it afterwards. Of course, we had Ethiopian food when I visited, right? And then, I don't know if any of y'all ever had the pleasure of him making a cartoon of your brain. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Okay, yeah. So, the cartoon of your brain is the funniest thing you will ever see in your lifetime. He draws a caricature of your face, and he draws little captions out. I mean, it is hysterical. You will, if you're having a bad day, if he did one for you, if you pull that out, you are absolutely going to be laughing to your phone on the floor. It's just so funny. Another funny thing he did, he would take regular newspaper clippings and then he'd change the caption and he'd put something funny beneath it. A completely normal, serious, and he'd change it and it would become something funny. The other thing he did is he would leave messages on my phone in the voice of Bugs Bunny. And one of the things I've done for a long time now, I'm very happy I've done it. I've saved messages from friends and family that are still alive, but you never know when they're going to go. And his, of course, I have many from him, right? Let's see. So funny. I'm serious. I'm looking at a brown paper bag. It's actually pretty funny. Anything else? I'll simply close with this. He loved his family. He loved Marilyn. He missed his mom and dad, Pearl and Jerome. He loved Lori for taking care of Lauren when he got sick. He was just in awe at that and was so grateful. He was so proud of his two nephews, Zach and John. So, I know he's up there now, looking down, he's laughing his head off, and he's got a giant canvas and he's sketching away. And his artwork was the good thing about him living where he lived, right? Finally moving into a place like that, was all the other distractions were cleared away. So he focused on his art. His art was spectacular. I don't know if any of y'all have ever seen it or he said something to you, but I told him, I said, Jacob, we need to do a website because you can sell this. It was so good. So he's gonna be missed, there's no doubt. But I'll see him again soon in like 65 years. He said, you'll live to 130. Yes, I agree. Yeah, so that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. I know it's very hard to speak. Oh, thank you. Oh, well, I was very lucky growing up because I had two really cool brothers, and they were 9 and 10 years older than me, and when they came home from college, I got a lot of attention, I was really spoiled, and I was treated wonderfully. And they were 9 and 10 years older than me, and Lauren was 9 years older than me, and I always called him my younger brother, because he was younger than the two of them. And then some of you know my oldest brother, who's 10 years older than me, is Murray, and some of you know him as Jacob, and some of you know him as Murray Jacob. But I always called him Moo, because that was my childhood nickname for him. And I always called him my older brother. And at college, one of my friends, who I'd known a long time, said, wait a minute, your younger brother isn't younger than you? And I realized how confused I made people, but it totally made sense to me. I had a younger brother who was younger than my older brother. Moo was really so fun and creative, and always really planned special things for me when he came home from college.
And one of the things was going to Euclid Beach. Those of you from Cleveland know Euclid Beach. And it was always great to go there. And food and rides. And I don't know how I knew at a really young age about the restaurant on top of the town. Those of you who are from Cleveland. But I knew it was somewhere like really special and like really chic people went. And I was in elementary school. And I wanted to go. And he took me for dessert. And that was like really cool and really special, and I could tell my friends about it. But the most fun thing was how creative he was about my birthday present. And it really wasn't about getting a big expensive present. It was about the journey. So what he would do is he would send me on a scavenger hunt, and I would go all over the neighborhood. And this was back when your parents just opened the door and let you go, and they weren't watching you every second. And I was running around the neighborhood, and I would go to Coventry Playground, and I would go to what I called the castle at the condos on Edge Hill, and up pear trees and in the raspberry bushes and around our house, looking for clues. And at the end was a present, and it usually was something he made. And a lot of times, I think you call it a flip book. It was like a little pad of paper, and he had cartoons, and you would flip it, and they would move. And I always loved that. And he just helped me do lots of fun things. Like the first walkathon, I think, was for MS, and he did, it was 20 miles. And he's like, you have to train. And I was like, train? I can walk 20 miles, it's nothing. But we walked up to Cedar and Green, where there was a Dolly Museum back then, which is now in Florida. And of course, he wanted to see the Dolly Museum. But it was really interesting because he told me a lot about that artwork. And then when I was older, I would get packages for my birthday around the world. And he was one of the first people I ever heard of to go to Alaska, and a big package came for me. And it was a full-size reindeer rug. And this was before I was a vegetarian in high school. And I really never knew what to do with that rug because it was big. And my mother hated that rug because it shed like really coarse hair. And so she put it in what we in the extended family call the room. And if any of you, if you know what the room is, you know what the room is. Because my family were pack rats, and it's the upstairs front room, and you don't know what you were gonna find in there. And even though we had a basement that was full, this was full of the cool stuff, like antiques. The front little room that they had, the secret room, had rolls of the piano. The piano was a player piano, and all the rolls were in there. And somehow my Kittles ended up in there, and all of my brother's art and sculpture and found art things that he did were in there, and my grandfather's archives, and the rug disappeared. So never know what happened to that rug. And Moo traveled all over the world, and he was in Operation Crossroad, Africa, I think in college, and went to Senegal. And he brought back some really unusual artwork, and one of the pieces was a hermaphrodite statue that went on top of my parents' Chinois break front. And people would come to my house, my parents' home really, would be like, you have such an eclectic home. Because we had this very big painting that my aunt did that was wonderful. No, my aunt's art teacher did that was wonderful. And then we had these interesting art pieces from Africa, and you just never knew what you were gonna find. He also traveled to the Amazon, and he's like, oh, I didn't have problems, I just picked up Portuguese. I was like, really? And he was in the Middle East, and he lived in Vancouver and Atlanta and Colorado, and probably more places I'm not even aware of. And it was really interesting. He got sick, and he was in Atlanta in the hospital. And there were a lot of nurses of African descent, and he said, you know, they're talking about me, about my weight, and in their native language. And I went out, and I was like, you know, he knows what you're saying. Are you calling him fat? And they were. And they were like, oh, how does he know that? I'm like, He knows. He became a really good cook. I don't know how, maybe from my mother, but he really loved food and he loved cooking. And he was a personal chef before it was sort of an in thing to be a personal chef, because now everybody's doing that and everybody's a celebrity chef. And he didn't make run-of-the-mill food like meat and potatoes. He made quinoa like 40 years ago, and I had never even heard of it. He ran a bread company in Atlanta, and he didn't need recipes. Like, I'm a good cook, but I need the ingredients that I need. But he would just open up the refrigerator and see what was there, and he would make the most delicious soup or stew or whatever. And I just never could improvise the way he could. And he really hated the food at the nursing home, like with a passion. And he wanted to set up a mini kitchen. I think I asked some of you not to get him one of those hot plates because, like, you're not in an apartment, but he did convince somebody to get him a full set of knives, which did not go well. And they were confiscated because some confused person came in his room, and I was like, you're gonna get kicked out of here. You need to, like, not do that. And at Heather Hill, I was helping him fill out his menu. He was there for quite a while. And I said, what do you want? He's like, I want tabbouleh. And I said, I'm 99% sure that they do not have tabbouleh here in Geauga County at Heather Hill. And his response was like, did you ask? And just write it in, because you never know, they might get it. And if anybody at that nursing home had ever even heard of tabbouleh, I would be shocked. Mostly, they really liked ham and cheese sandwiches, which they were serving to a Jewish person, and I told them a million times that he wouldn't eat ham, and somehow that did not compute. And I spent a lot of my life lately shopping for food for him to bring to the nursing home. He had a little mini fridge, and I made sure it was stocked up. And it was so adventurous. I always went to Legacy Village, because that was close to Montefiore, which is now Daughters of Miriam, which, by the way, he feels is like a cult name. People in cults are like, Daughters of Miriam. So he made fun of them quite a bit. And it actually is kind of a cult name, but I digress. And so he wanted green pickled tomatoes, and I thought, is that even a food? I don't know. And is it a food that they would have at a grocery store? And they did not. But I woke up in the middle of the night, and I remembered that we would go to Corky and Lenny's on Sunday morning during Sunday school, when we would cut during services. And back then, Corky and Lenny's had free pickles on the table. They don't anymore, but they did. And there was always these little tomatoes, which no one ate. They were always left. And I thought, oh, maybe Jack's Deli would have those green pickled tomatoes. And in fact, they did. My brother was a good artist. And my mother had this wonderful, huge portfolio of all his artwork in the room. From elementary school through high school, and she did not have that for Lauren, and she did not have that for me. And doing artwork was one of the things he could really do to keep occupied and happy in the nursing home. And I have a real lot of portfolios of his art, which I have left at the room that we're going to go to if you would like to join us. And any of you are free to take some art if you would like. I'm willing to share. I'm just asking the orange pieces don't take, because I'm going to make that into fabric for my nephew's John's wedding quilt, because his new wife really likes orange. And my brother did some pieces in orange specifically for her. And in the future, I would really like to do something with his art, but I don't know what to do, like maybe a website or a book. I'm going to think about it. And his friend Karuna Dar helped him produce some small books and some calendars, and he loved doing that and picking things out. I personally would have picked out different things, so now that I'm in charge, it will be completely different. And he really knew the Cleveland Museum of Art well, and we went many times. And he was looking for a specific painting, and he went up to one of the guards there, and he's like, "Where's this painting?" And they're like, "We don't know." They were calling around, and it turned out his favorite painting was in the director's personal office. And we were invited into the office to go and look at it. And my brother's like, "Of course he has it in his office." But we did get to see it. And my cousin James from New York called yesterday morning to share some memories. And I forgot that Lou was his Kabb counselor at Indian Head in Pennsylvania. And at the end of the camp session, you were to make a plaque. And apparently James said the plaques were terrible, nobody ever knew what to do, but my brother, of course, had a whole plan, and it was gonna be spectacular in 3D, and he and his co-counselor kind of got into it, and my brother was a little bit stubborn, and he's like, "I have a plan, I have a creative vision, and that's gonna happen," and it did. And James said it was the best plaque that has ever been made at Indian Head, and he believes it's still there because he's visited. And that does sound like my brother. And he also had a real affinity for spirituality and religion. And I thought it was the era he grew up in, because 10 years ahead of me was sort of the Vietnam era, protesting, people getting into Buddhism. But my brother Lauren didn't get into any of that. So I don't think it was that, but maybe it was Boston, which my father forbid me to go to, because he said it ruined my brother with some crazy stuff. But I went to University of Wisconsin, and they were very into protest too. It's just my father didn't know about those. I can't say I'm particularly spiritual, and I'm not sure what drew him to the love of studying other cultures and religions, but maybe my mother, because she was religious, and she was very supportive of anything he wanted to do. And she loved to make a sukkah. I think maybe Sharon, you remember coming to our house, and we would always decorate and have dinner in the Great Barber, and we had wonderful seders and Shabbat meals, and they were always really nice. And I really did try to understand what being a Sufi was. And there was a retreat here in Cleveland at the Botanical Gardens, and I came to a morning session. And apparently the leader, Pierre Vilat, was there, who's a very famous leader throughout the world. And I got to meet him, and he was a little man in white with a turban and white sneakers. And he was small, but he had a real presence, and we did meditations, and he was loud when he was meditating. And it was really interesting. And my brother really loved his Sufi community, like loved it. And it was such a big part of his life. And he loved the community, the drumming, the music, the teachings. He loved teaching. He loved organizing the retreats. He loved the dancing. I think he really loved everything about it. And so many people from the Sufi community have shared these wonderful stories about their relationship to Jacob and how helpful he was to them in times of really hard times in their lives, and how supportive he was. And then I just want to say thank you to any of you who are in the room or listening on the tape. Thank you for being there to support him when he really needed you. That was really special. And just your friendship meant a lot to him. And he really loved Judaism as well, and was very knowledgeable in literature and history. And he could daven, and he often went to a daily minyan, and he liked to stay up all night studying at Shavuot. And he is the person that wanted to have a 6-hour Passover Seder, which nobody else really in the Reform world wants to do that. They all think faster the better. So that's why he liked to kind of go to the Orthodox community, because they really shared his love of that. And my family did like singing songs after Seder, so we always did that. And when he got sick, we did our own service, and we would sing. And he really enjoyed that. And he enjoyed when his Jewish friends and rabbis visited. And there were so many people in the Orthodox community who were very helpful to him, and he just enjoyed them as friends. And I also really appreciated their support. And he knew a lot about world politics that I didn't know. And maybe that also was from the era he grew up. I'm not sure, but we like to watch the news together, and then we would discuss current events. And I would see a commentator on a news panel, and I didn't know anything about it, and my brother could rattle off who the commentator was, and he was a speech writer for a certain president and what books he wrote, and I was always amazed that he knew all that. He really followed the news closely from the Middle East, and for those of you who don't know, he was very interested and committed to the peace process, even starting in the 70s, and very involved with interfaith relationships, and he had many Palestinian friends, and he remained hopeful to this day that there would be peace in the Middle East, and I hope that there is, and I hope for him that there is, because it meant a lot to him that there would be an ability for all religions to get along and live together in that very special land. Back to Passover, there's an Italian comedian named Sebastian Maniscalco, and my cousin Lois introduced him to me, and he's on YouTube, and you can Google him, but his wife is Jewish, she's Italian, and he does a really funny bit about going to the Seder. And just very briefly, he comes in, he's starving, he's like, I sit down, I want to have bread immediately with some oil, and he goes, they're passing out pamphlets, and I say, pamphlets, we're reading? And no, it's a great bit. And he also does a great bit on Italian versus Jewish food. And he says, well, the Jews, I'll give them breakfast, but after that, no. The Italians should be catering everything for them. And he's like, I went out for gefilte yesterday? No, nobody says that about a restaurant. So in the spirit of my brother, who loved to laugh, I encourage you to Google him. His name's Sebastian Maniscalco, and he really is funny. He did love humor, he loved comedies, and we would watch movies together, like What We Do in the Shadows, The Death of Stalin, but his real favorite was Galaxy Quest, which puzzles me because I don't even think he liked Star Trek or watched it, but he did like that movie, and he liked old TV shows and movies a lot. And my father and I loved animals, but my brother never had a pet. Actually, neither of my brothers had a pet, but I loved having pets. Guinea pigs, whatever, turtles. And it might have been his lifestyle, I'm just not sure, but when he moved in with me, I had a dog named BB that I adopted from my Uncle Bud, who was in a nursing home. And BB was so sweet, but I was at work, and BB just would hang out with my brother, and he really grew to love that dog. And he also thought my cousin Lois's dog, Leo, was hilarious, probably because it's a little teeny dog like this big, and he had quite an attitude. And everyone, and I mean everyone, would tell you how great my brother was and how funny he was, and honestly, I never thought he was funny at all. And that's mostly because I was his sister, and I just would roll my eyes. And I like to be bossy. I got that from my mother and kind of be in charge. But I was like, oh my God, really? No. So I'm glad Lisa enjoyed it, because I was always just not about it. And I really didn't like to say no to my brother, and I agreed to move 300 plus boxes of his from Atlanta to Cleveland and store them, and I'm talking years. And, I talked about the room. Well, my family is like pack racks, and he just would have article upon article and files about humor and Judaism and food and being a Sufi. And the boxes contained his life work, and I didn't want to be disrespectful and throw that away. So he always felt like he still had his life. And my nephew John and my sister-in-law Lori and I are going to clean out. I have a storage area still. I'm not even sure what's in there, but not 300 boxes. And I just agreed to so many things because I really wanted to make sure his life after he lost his independence was as rich and meaningful as it could be. He just loved to be adventurous when he was well, and he would go to the Twin Festival and the Duct Tape Festival, which is on the west side, and he'd be in the craft tent, apparently. I don't know who took it, maybe my cousin Nick, and apparently he'd be like with the 8-year-olds making like crafts. And he didn't really care, but He loved doing it. He'd go to the Albanian festival or the Greek festival. The one thing he really wanted to do, he never got to do. For some reason, he wanted to go to the Crystal Palace, which is in Cuyahoga Falls, and hear Ernest Ingley. And apparently there was a wonderful place to eat there. And I was like, no, we're just, I don't want to go. And I just want to say to those of you who are here and those of you who are watching on the stream, thank you so much for all your support, love, and care you gave to my brother, whether it was phone calls, visiting, chanting, monetary help for art supplies, clothing, food. It was so meaningful to him, but also meaningful to me, because I'm so grateful that you were able to support him and make sure he was okay. He really loved your friendship. And, you know, I couldn't oversee his daily care when I moved out of state. And knowing that some of you were there to make sure he was okay was really important to me. Like, he was hospitalized, and I always was there, and he was hospitalized during my nephew John's wedding. And my friend Cheryl, who's a nurse, went and made sure he knew that I was overseeing it by phone and that Cheryl would be there and make sure that he was okay. And I'm so grateful. And also just all the support and people who have opened their homes to me to stay so that I could come to Cleveland. It was so important to me, especially these last 2.5 years when I had sold my home. So your generosity is a real mitzvah. And my final words really are, although he drove me crazy, I'm really gonna miss the crazy. And he really lived a rich and full life, and I think I'm gonna take that from him and try and live more, not just kind of have a conservative, regular life. So thank you so much.
Beautiful, both of you. I just have a few early comments to make at the end. You know, people say that others live for as long as we remember them, and in fact, it's not a cliche. When we say the things that they did and we do the things that they did, Marilyn, as you just said, then a very real part of them lives on. And so I encourage you to say things that Murray Jacob said, and to do things that he did, and to give it credit out loud and say, as my friend Jacob would do or say, or as Murray would do. I'll offer a few of my own ideas, and I'm certain you will have a multitude of others, and I would encourage you to share them with each other, the people in your circles, because really then someone's life and teaching they do live on. So when I asked Murray Jacob's family to name adjectives that described him, the first word offered was eccentric, followed immediately by Marilyn saying kind, and Laurie echoing like immediately, without a beat, very kind. His kindness was real. It was genuine kindness, and allowed him to make and sustain lasting connections with others, with you. He listened attentively. He was sincerely interested in what you thought. He kept in touch. He asked you about your lives. He saw you, and he cared deeply about you, and frankly about others throughout the world that he would never meet. When we talked the other day, Marilyn offered that this type of inherent kindness she thinks comes from her mother, Pearl. If you were lucky enough to have met Pearl, you knew her generosity and her kindness. But Marilyn, you have it too. This type of caring is both inspirational and aspirational. In Murray Jacob's honor and in his memory and in the Farron tradition, might we, you and I, act with just a bit more kindness, a bit more patience, more empathy. As you've heard, Murray Jacob was a devoted Jew and Sufi, and he saw no reason not to practice both. His serenity, his ability to live contentedly despite so many challenges, his physical health, his poverty, that is a direct result of his commitment to his spiritual life. The poem, I'm going to read you a poem. It's by Jalal ad-Din Muhammad Rumi, known most commonly as Rumi. It implores its readers, it implores us to wake up to the beauty and potential of each day. And because Murray Jacob did, in fact, live this way, through travel, through going to various and sundry fairs, we heard about the Renaissance Fair and the Duct Tape Fair and the Twinsburg Fair, which he just thought would be interesting, even though, of course, he's not a twin. His adventurous and delicious cooking. I have a vivid memory of a pot of soup sitting on the stove that you said, oh, it's going to cook for like 3 days. It smelled really good. He was a reader, and and a whole host of different ways that he, in fact, lived every day as fully as he possibly can. So this is, I think, a fitting way to remember and honor him. The poem is called The Breeze at Dawn. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the doorsill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. It's a compelling poem and an even more compelling philosophy by which to live. Murray Jacob's curiosity is a part of this sense of wonder, the sense of every day something new. He wanted to know all kinds of things, and he kept learning as long as he kept breathing. In his memory, may each one of us be inspired to remain awake to the wonders of the world. As you've heard, he had a great sense of humor. He loved to laugh. Sometimes, as I mentioned before, he used humor as provocation, but mostly he just wanted to see if he'd get at least one person to laugh at him. He was often the last person laughing at his own jokes. Maybe find your own inner goofiness and see if you can make someone laugh in his honor and because the world is such a serious place. I mentioned before, and Marilyn talked about when we spoke the other day, her brother's ability to remain content and happy regardless of what befell him. Lori remarked that although he was impoverished, he lived a rich life, and Marilyn used those exact words today, a rich and full life. This is an extraordinary trait, one he surely cultivated through meditation and spiritual practice, but something available to all of us. Our weekly Torah reading that the Jews read all over the world this week, opens with a verse. It's from Deuteronomy chapter 11. See, I set before you blessing and curse. I set before you today blessing and curse. Murray Jacob chose blessing. He chose art. He chose color. He chose delicious food. He chose kindness. He chose friendship. He chose family. He chose wholeness and holiness. He chose love. He chose peace. May it be true of us as well. It is said that what matters most is with whom we journey through life. I am sure that you are grateful for the privilege and honor of traveling through this life alongside Murray Jacob Kabb. Zichrono livracha, may the memory of this good man be for a blessing. You've heard so many words. Just to take a moment to let them sort of settle. If you have your own memories in your own hearts, it's a time to just explore those, just a few moments of quiet. Just a moment, I'll be asking you to rise for El Malay Rachamim, our traditional prayer for mourners. And after that, we'll be proceeding to the cemetery, but just want to make sure that everyone knows here that following the burial, the family and friends will be gathering at 132 Chatham Way. It's off Som Center Road. It's a very small little road, so don't miss it. Right past like that shopping center, is that Golden Gate? Eastgate, right, so Eastgate, right there. Chatham Way, 132, was right behind the pool. From 2:30 to 6:30 this afternoon, and then we'll be doing a service at 5. And I just want to say one more thing. We have a tradition not to mix good things and sad things, but I think actually that Murray would appreciate this. So today is the yard site, the first anniversary of the death of 6 Israelis that were held hostage for 500 days or for some huge long number of days. And the one of them is Hirsch Goldberg Poland. His mother is quite remarkable, quite the person to speak about what it means to make peace and to sort of to bring understanding into the world. And she asked that today be a day, this yard site, this first anniversary of their death is 6. She called the beautiful 6. That we do something kind, that we reach out to one another in kindness. And I actually think that it is a perfect way to connect Murray Jacob with the Mideast, with Israel, with Palestinians, with Israelis, with Jews, everyone together. Let's see if we can reach out in kindness in his honor, in his memory, and in the memory of the beautiful 6 as well. Please rise for Amalei Rachamim. Dear God, into your care we entrust the spirit of Murray, Alan, Jacob, Kabb. If you keep faith with your children in death as in life, sustain us that we may meet with serenity the mysteries that lie ahead, knowing that when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you, God, are with us, a loving friend in whom we put our trust. You are the light of our life, our hope in eternity. Al malei rachamim, shochen b'amromin, hamseh menucha nochana, tacha kanfei shechina, im kadoshim u'toharim kazo harikim asurim et nishmat, Mordechai Yaakov ben Yirmiyahu, v'penina shehalach la'olamo, Baal harachamim yesterehu b'sedra kanafav la'olamim, v'yitzor b'tzor hachayim et nishmato, Adonai hu nachalato, v'yanuach b'shalom, al mishkavo v'nomar amen. Compassionate God, eternal spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Mordechai Yaakov, to Murray Alan Jacob, son of Yirmiyahu and Penina of Jerry and Pearl, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence. Let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And together we say, Amen. If you have been asked to be a pallbearer, we invite you to come forward. A number of you, we didn't reach before the beginning of the service, but if we did, please come forward. In addition, we invite Dale, Missy, Ernie, Bats, Bruce, Rose, Nick, Lyndon, and Jeff Weiler.